Beautiful.
So thank you all for coming today, and I hope we are able to share some information back and forth. The reason I titled my talk Resiliency, Empowerment, and Reducing Health Disparities is that I kind of see this is the direction that integrative medicine, the role that it can have, and the importance that it has for our community. And as we were talking before we got started, we are already using integrative medicine. It's sectioned off as a specialty now, only because I think Western medicine likes to specialize things and likes to put things in their little bubbles. But really, it's medicine. Integrative medicine is just medicine. It's good medicine. It's taking a look at the whole person, at the whole community, at all of the different factors that come to play in determining our health. And so integrative medicine, I feel like, is the future of medicine, but for now, it's got its title of as a specialty, or as a separate thing. But I don't think of it as separate. It's all of it. So I say all of that to kind of put that on in the back of our minds as we go through what I hope to cover today. I think in terms of resiliency and empowerment, those are things that I feel like we are always striving for, especially as we are navigating these uncertain times, as we're just coming out of this worldwide pandemic, and who knows what the next one's going to be. You know, those resiliency is a term that came to the forefront as we are facing these new health challenges, but also facing the fact that we have these long-standing history of challenges and that never got addressed. And so I feel like I'm using resilience, the term resiliency, in the context of the role that health plays in that, and the role that improving our health plays in making us more resilient to whatever life brings. And I feel like empowerment is not, knowledge is empowerment. And so I'm hoping to share some of my perspectives on things and ways that we can be empowered to be better advocates for our health. And the last thing that's kind of along those lines is the way that I see integrative medicine and of taking this holistic approach as being our tools, our ways to combat the inequities that are so built into our healthcare system, that this is one way to do it. And specific to what integrative medicine is and why it's important, how you can access it, I'll touch on those things, and I'll touch on them more towards the end, in the perspective from where I like my journey and kind of the things that I've explored more in my path to actually finding my own health, but also to helping to finding tools and resources for my patients. And so, but you guys are already accessing it, as you were talking about your turmeric and your ginger and your black seed oil and all of those things. You guys are on it. We look for those things, and our ancestors, our parents, our grandparents use integrative medicine. They just didn't call it that. It was what you did, and it was what we do, and it is innate in our ancestry, knows what in our ancestry and in our bodies and in nature. All of those things are innate in our healing, and we just need there's nothing wrong with tapping into it. In fact, the opposite, we need to tap into it. So this is kind of my premise. And like I said, coming out of the pandemic, COVID brought to light the things that we already knew, you know, that African Americans have worse outcomes. And it's not because there's something wrong with us. There's history there that's causing change. You know, now we know, we've proven that the effects of racism and inequity on our ancestors is passed down into our genes to a certain degree, and all of those things that are, these microaggressions and all of these things that we're exposed to impact our health. And it's not something that you can test with a blood test, but it's there. And so even when you match for everything else, African Americans tend to have worse outcomes. So that is why tapping into all of these things that are innate in us, but tapping into all these things are so important. Our healthcare system is not equipped for everybody to get sick at the same time. We've seen that. And it's not built to keep people healthy either, because there's a whole lot of money to be made on sick people. It's just, it's our system is broken. And our system being a for-profit system is got fault built into it. But again, if we have the knowledge and the tools in our toolbox to try to combat some of that for ourselves, then we can be able to help to better navigate the system with all of its faults. And how can we combat misinformation? Because I feel like that's deadly as any disease. And we saw that again with COVID and rumors that were going out about what can help and what doesn't help, and and the risks of vaccines and things like that, that we were bombarded with information, and it was very hard sometimes to tease out what's right and what's not. Yeah, so let's see. This Mr. Kevlon gave me this image, and I thought it's so apt to one of the biggest faults in our medical system, is that we went from health and healing being the focus and the foundation and the purpose, to it being overrun by these big corporations that are profit driven. And it's, that doesn't mean that the person that's in front of you, like the physician in front of you, is profit driven. Very rarely are they, but they are operating in a system that's laying down rules and protocols and things like that, that in the back of it, the motivation is at least on some level profit driven. And that is taking away from its effectiveness. And like I said, one of the biggest roots of its problems is that piece of it. So how can we be our own health advocate? And so that's kind of one of the next phase. This is me before I was going into surgery, and it was I took this selfie of myself as a reminder of how sometimes it can feel just awful being a patient. And there's this whole attitude, like, doctors make the worst patients. It's true. I felt awful being in that bed, and just because I was scared, and I think that that's often a reason why we try to avoid things that are unpleasant. Being vulnerable, being exposed, experiencing painful things, that's not always pleasant. And so, not wanting to engage or those sorts, or engage with the healthcare system, especially the traditional one, when this is so often our experience. If not only is it what we're experiencing itself being painful, but being worried about bad interactions with the doctors is really common. Being, all of the things, like all of the things that I list, just it's not. It sometimes, very often, it's not fun, but it's also so necessary, because health is wealth. It's our resiliency. It's our, again, it's the foundation of our ability to navigate all of the other things that are so uncertain and so heavy in our lives right now. If we don't have our health, then we are facing an even bigger challenge than we would if we do have our optimal health. And it's important for our families and for our friends and for the people who see us and look at us as examples. If one person's healthy, making healthy choices, you're being an example for those around you, seeing you do the same thing. So it's crucial. Also just to say that even when experiences with the medical profession are not ideal or not pleasant, I think, you know, when you see all this misinformation going on, and you think like there's a lot of all or none going on with some of those messages, and that also can be harmful. So that, you know, even when your doctor, you know, that relationship wasn't serving you well, it doesn't mean that all doctors are that way. So I kind of wanted to you know, plug that in. And so how do we advocate for our own health? What the way that I see it, it takes there's 5 pieces to that. The one is taking an active role in your health and making it a priority. 2 is knowing your own data, knowing your numbers, knowing your labs, knowing when, who, what, when, and where things happened, so that you're able to pull that up and kind of keep track for yourself. So you have the responsibility and have the knowledge to know what you need to know and what you need to do and when. Being physically active, there's no replacement for that. There's no pill, there's no alternative to that. And same with eating healthy, making healthier choices with our food and the information that we put into our body, to making sure that is as healthy as it can be. And then I think the fifth part of that is that it's not one size fits all for everybody, and that it's that you take an integrative approach, which is what we're doing today, kind of talking about all the different aspects of what constitutes health and what, you know, what that brings. Is also looking at, you know, how you guys were just talking about, it's how your turmeric can help with pain, and how your ginger and all those things, how there's so many different things and knowledge bases out there that we can pull upon to try to optimize our health. It's not just one person's information, and not just, you know, Western medicine giving you a prescription. Not to say that that's bad. And again, that's what I'm saying. Like, don't throw that all out just because there are other things out there to do. Bring them all in to your project of keeping yourself healthy and getting yourself to your optimal state of health. So I'm going to go into these a little bit more. When I say take an active role in my health, it's these are the bare minimum, right? You're seeing your doctor once a year. That's your primary care doctor, or, you know, your point person who's going to just do your screenings and things like that. If you're healthy and you don't have any conditions that you know of, once a year, just do that check-in. Every 3 to 6 months, if you have any chronic condition, and that can be carrying extra weight, it can mean high blood pressure, it can mean diabetes, or a history of those things. Checking in, just because you got checked once doesn't mean you don't need to check on things more regularly. So if you have any chronic condition, you should be seeing the doctor at least twice a year, sometimes 4 times a year. So and then all of our health screenings, again, because it's not necessarily pleasant, and it's one more thing to put on our list of things to do, but it's so important to make sure we're getting our colonoscopies and our mammograms and perhaps all of the healthcare screenings, and getting them on schedule, so that we know what we need to know. And if there's changes in our health, that we are not ignoring it. And this is my favorite analogy, that we don't be the ostrich, right? We're not sticking our head in the sand and ignoring things because either we're scared to deal with it, we don't want to deal with it, we're not sure how to deal with it. That's why we're here, is to have more tools in our toolbox to deal with those sorts of things, and to empower ourselves with knowledge, so that it's maybe not so daunting, not so scary, and that we should feel supported in doing these things. So kind of just to go through, when I talk about knowing my data, knowing your data, have this on a piece of paper, have a list or a folder of your own health information, so that you know what you need to know, what what your stats are, so to speak, right? Who your doctor is, how to contact them, when you were last seen. A lot of time goes by so fast, and you think, oh yeah, I just was at the doctor last year, and next thing you realize, oh wait, that was 2019. It's been a while, but it happens, right? Especially with the like, there's all this stuff going on in the world right now. It's easy for time to slip by. So have it on a calendar where you say, oh, it must be coming up October. It's time for me to do my check-in. Knowing what you're taking, and that includes your supplements, right? If you're taking St. John's wort and you're taking, which is great, like, right, you're doing all these things, but have a list somewhere so you know what you're taking and why, and how it's affecting you, or those sorts of things, so that you're keeping track of these things for yourself. When blood work, your blood pressure, your blood sugar, all these things are things you should know and have access to be able to check. So I feel like every household needs to have a blood pressure cuff, and every, if you have any inkling or any family history of diabetes, get a blood pressure monitor, a blood sugar monitor. The strips and things you can buy as a kit, you don't need that many if you don't have a condition where you need to check them regularly, but know your data. Or if you're getting regular labs, you'll see your blood sugar on that, so you don't necessarily need to have a monitor at home. But those are all things that we can do for ourselves to know for sure what's going on. And then talking about our weight, and the Western medicine talks a lot about BMI, and now we know that in African Americans, it's not as good a predictor. It's not as clear cut about whether when your BMI is elevated, what does that mean? You're not necessarily unhealthy? No, not necessarily the case. What's more important is in changes in your weight. Has it been going up or down, and recently? And I think what also is important is how fit are you, because that's, I think, a much better indicator of your health status. Can you climb a flight of stairs? Can you walk a mile? What's your resting heart rate? Those sorts of things. So know your data. We have to be active. So many of our jobs and our lifestyles keep us in front of a computer screen, and doctors included. Myself, and like, we're charting all day long. It's a sedentary, our culture has become so much more sedentary, and we know that's leading to worse health outcomes. So you have to make movement a priority, we have to make a part of our lives. And it doesn't mean just, necessarily like, oh, you have to go to the gym. It's that we're conscious of how much we're moving, how long we're sitting. And we've got these little like monitors. I've got the, ring, there's a watch, there's all these things that can remind us to, hey, you've been sitting too long, go up, go get stretch and stand up. And so those are things that are certainly important. On that note, here's our break. So it's just, let's just stretch ourselves out a little bit, move our body, move our muscles, not be sitting and not be hunched over, that we're stretching ourselves out a bit. Yeah. So I think this is also a good spot to just, before I segue into the next segment.
Yeah.
Anybody got any questions they want to post
So,
up? And I'm going to let Mariana.
I wanted to kind of touch on the mental health aspect of why a lot of us aren't going to the doctor. And I know you mentioned, we just have bad interactions sometimes, or we're not getting outcomes. But then also like the historical aspect of it, right? There's a lot of fear, especially in the woke, conscious, Afrocentric community members. And so I noticed you said something that was like, hey, you don't have to throw away their information. You can kind of gather it up. what suggestion could you give to some of us, whether we're old school, new school cats, and we're trying to grapple with this holistic world, but we tend to like mentally, we block it out. Is there anything in particular you can say to help folks make that shift to maybe possibly receive the different diagnosis in order to, even if that means you're going to create your own holistic approach? What can help us to relax, to utilize everything instead of being one track minded because of, some really bad experiences we've had?
I think, and it's so valid. And that's why I put my picture up there, because those feelings they're so valid. I think the first thing I would say is look at the medical system as a tool in your toolbox that you're going to use for you. And that when that you're going to go to the doctor, you're going to go in and you're going to take that information, and you can always just take that information, write notes and do those things that I think I bring this up later too, but you can use it and then take it back to a place that feels safe. If that place doesn't feel safe, in the clinic office, or in the, or however it is, if you're not feeling safe in that moment, that's okay. That's valid. Take that information as best you can, take it back to a place that you feel safe, and then work on processing it and trying to weigh it, write it down, take it back, but utilize it as not where you're being judged, not where it's it's not a judgment, it's a tool, and it's a tool for you to use. Right. So our doctors, we need to look at our doctors and demand of them to be that for us. Like, look, I'm trying to get to my state of best health. How are you going to help me do that? And that we see all of the different health professions as tools in our toolbox, not just that they're over there with their knowledge and we are here without ours, or with ours, or with our experience that is so different from theirs, because it is. But it doesn't mean that their information is not applicable to us. It's just very often the disconnect is in the delivery and in the space between the difference in experiences. So I think that's what I would do first is
the mind shift. Okay, what about the language shift, right? Because sometimes when we hear the word advocate, we ready to throw up our fists, rally. I don't know about y'all, but I know when it comes to my health, we're a little bit more sensitive, we're personally attached. What is, like, I noticed you said my optimum health. What is one go-to phrase that you can give to everybody that you found most effective in the language of doctors, who oftentimes see our culture, our intonation, all this other stuff differently, right? I know that when I'm working in mental health, there are certain key words that if I say that to a professional, they're going to say, oh, okay, I'm going to have to regard this individual a little differently because they got their words right. So is there like one or two words that you would say are very powerful when you're speaking to a doctor who maybe you're trying to advocate for, and you're trying to keep that energy and those emotions in check if you're not getting necessarily the care that you need?
Yeah, I would say one would be have a notepad, take notes. Okay. Because I think that's one way to get the person who's talking to you to slow down. Because so often, they're like moving like this, and if they see you, like, wait a second, can you slow that down so that I can write this down? It's gonna force them to slow down. So one thing I would say is take notes, because if we're just sitting there nodding, or we've shut down, they can just keep on going, and they've left the room before it's hit us how like what they've even said. So I would say that one, take notes, and in that process, you're going to be asking questions about, and I'll get to some of like kind of how I see that, like what questions you would want to ask about an intervention or something like that. But I really think that there's so much of the interaction that it's unspoken, and it's the kind of thing that you feel like 30 minutes later when you're like back in the car and you now come to a space and you're starting to process, like, and there's so many things that come up. So that you take it back to a safe space if it doesn't feel that way initially.
Yeah, I know one thing that makes me feel safe is anytime I'm talking about anything medically, I always suggest people to use your recorder on your cell phone. Because oftentimes if you ask permission, hey, just for my knowledge and information and to be able to refer back to this, do you mind if I record this? And that'll say a lot right there. If they screw up their face, then it's like, well, why don't you want me to record and document this experience? But then number two, when you do have to get that second opinion or go elsewhere, you have it literally verbatim. So we have these cell phones for a lot, but I use that voice recorder often. So are there any other questions?
I don't have a question. This is Sister Ngina, but I do have a quick comment. I worked at Kaiser for 28 years. And one thing I think that us as African Americans don't do is we feel intimidated by the doctors. And at Kaiser, you pay for Kaiser a month in advance. So whatever doctor you go to, you're paying for that. So demand a certain thing. Demand that they listen to you and that they hear you. And that the other thing is have, like she's already said, knowledge of your own stuff, because we old school used to just put the doctors were many gods and we just gave them carte blanche. Do not do that. You pay for this, demand a certain amount of time, respect, and answers to your questions. This is great because other than that, they won't give it to you. Some of them. So that, I just wanted to throw that in.
All right, coming from a bit of experience in the community, is there anyone else that has any questions or, inquiries?
I have a question, but I'm going to defer to, Tony first.
Okay, go for it, Tony.
And then I have a question.
Good evening, everyone. So in line with what Mama Ngina just said, what is the best way to address a doctor that you feel is being inappropriate? Or, for example, he's supposed to be, working with you, but the television is on and he's staring at the TV screen. I mean, is it appropriate for me to say, excuse me, I'm over here. I'm not on the TV screen.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
Because I guess my fear is, if you say something, and again, in line with what Mama Ngina was saying, then your treatment will get worse and not better, because then they'll be upset, like, how dare you question me? Or because I've experienced all of that, and this is why I'm addressing it.
No, I think it's very fair, absolutely fair. And that's, but I do think it's not, when I say that it's fair, I understand what you're saying, and to be in that position of, this person is, you're vulnerable. And then you want to, like, they get mad at you for speaking up, but that's on them, not on you. And that's why you take notes, you take from what they're saying, you take the information that we need from them, like whether, if they're the cardiologist or the nephrologist, you take that information and then you take it back to a safe place, you ask for a second opinion. That is absolutely your right. And you have every right to demand the respect that you deserve. And I feel like So making the people treating you slow down, whether for you to write something down, whether it is to look you in the eye and say something to your face, to address you by your proper title, by your proper name, like those are things that you have every right to demand, because you are a human being and they should know better than to treat you as one. They should. And so if it makes them mad, that's on them. But I understand also how it can be a very scary position to be in, to not want to step on toes or make anybody angry, or those sorts of things. But I'll just say this. So my aunt was just in Kaiser, Oakland. She had a heart attack, and I wish I could have better answers for you, because I am a physician. I speak their language, but they still saw a Black woman laying in the bed, and they still saw another Black woman sitting next to her, and they didn't see a doctor. They didn't see a woman who deserved the standard of care. They saw somebody who fit their algorithm of, in my opinion, expendable. And so I wish I could say to you, say this and it'll get their attention, or say this and you won't be treated any less than you should be. But I don't have those words, because I couldn't even do it. I felt like I couldn't even advocate well enough for my aunt, and I was a doctor. And so and I also feel like I sometimes don't know how to advocate for myself, because I get in the situation where you get that kind of that sensation, like you know it's wrong, but in the moment you're just so flustered that it's not like you can't, the words are not going to come out right. Like they don't come right away. They come when you're back in your car and you're like, wait a second, did that just really happen? Or did you really just say that? Or so I wish I had a magic word that could get people's attention, and fix their biases, and call attention to their biases, and to how fast they're trying to get through things and get on to the next patient. But I don't. So the only things that I can say is, you never feel afraid to speak up about how you're being treated. There are in the system, there are safeguards for those sorts of things. And you can always ask for another opinion in Kaiser, like you because just like you said, you're paying for this. You're paying for your insurance, and you're paying to be a patient there. They are a tool for you. You are not they're giving their information, their knowledge to you, but that doesn't mean that you're beholden to them. They're not God. We as physicians are not gods. And so if you feel like you are not treated fairly, you absolutely should speak up and speak to the manager, speak to the nurse manager, go above their head, go to the quality control, make a report. Those are things that will lead to that. I mean, it's not fair that it's on us as patients when we're already vulnerable and we've already got a whole bunch of things that we have to deal with, to try to educate the doctors on how to treat people like human beings. It's really not. It shouldn't be on our list of things to do, but it is, and there are safeguards in place now. There's language in medicine now that when you say, I don't think I was treated fairly, I think that my doctor has some bias against me, or is just flat out racist, that triggers some oversight. And so I think that we can, you should speak up if you feel like you can. You should.
So advocating is definitely, I see the hands going up. We have Katabazi next. I want to say though, real quickly, just the same way people are using their cell phones to leverage unfair treatment with police officers. Again, before you go into your appointment, you don't have to say, hey, I'm here to make sure you don't do wrong, but you can refer to saying, hey, I'd like to audio or video record this for my memory, for my notes. And people tend to act right when they know that there are more than just you and them in the room. So just reminding you, use that cell phone. All right, Brother Katabazi, you have something to say?
Yes, in the form of a question. And thank you, Dr. um, Dr. Marina, for being here this evening. My question is, what are your thoughts on vitamin D and Black people as it relates to Black people? As the days continue to get darker, longer, as we move deeper into the year, what are your thoughts about maintaining proper vitamin D levels for Black people? I read some information that seemed to indicate that we have a particular sensitivity around the lack of the loss of vitamin D. So just interested in some of your thoughts on that.
Yes, sir. So, one of the things that they've posited as a possible explanation for one of the many factors of why African Americans tend to have worse health outcomes across the spectrum of conditions is that we tend to have much lower vitamin D, and for lots of reasons, right? One, we are as the days get shorter, there's less sunlight. Our jobs often keep us inside a whole lot more than usual. Very few of us are outdoors all day long, day in and day out. And the melanin in our skin makes, that we don't absorb as much UV light, and therefore we're not going to be converting to active vitamin D. So all of these things are factors that influence our ability to maintain sufficient vitamin D levels. And we know now that vitamin D is a cofactor in so many things in our immune system and inflammation and all of these things. So what we are not 100% sure is whether taking vitamin D is the fix-all for those things, because that hasn't really panned out per se. That you can so if every African American person takes vitamin D and gets their levels up on a blood test, does that fix everything? And the answer is it doesn't seem like it does. That doesn't mean though that vitamin D supplementation is not going to do anything. So having your vitamin D levels checked as part of your regular, routine labs is important, even though Medicare that kind of doesn't want to pay for it, unfortunately. But so that sometimes that might be a little bit of a sticking point in getting it paid for. And then if you can't, taking vitamin D as part of your regular daily supplements is important. Typically, I recommend 4,000 units for most patients, with some caveat. You can always check with your regular doctor. But for African Americans, especially, needing a slightly higher dose on a regular maintenance day, for regular daily maintenance, than the 1,000 units that is commonly touted.
All right, excellent. I think in this order,
Thank you.
we have Thandiwe. I hope I'm saying your name right. And then we'll go Mama Connie and then Judith after that. Glad to see you all have questions.
Connie? You're still muted.
Yes, I'm unmuted now. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Rasnow. Good to see you and have you here to give us some pearls of wisdom. So I'll say, a little bit about my background and then move on to, I'm a retired veterinarian, 41 years of practice, but my work in that industry and seeing all the limitation that I dealt with as a veterinarian and not being able to treat a lot because it's so pharmaceutically, I mean, if you can't cut it, you can't treat it with an antibiotic. I mean, there's there's a lot of areas that we have gray in my treatment for critters. But with that, I had started seeing an acupuncturist, and I found acupuncture and alternative medicine and Asian medicine and herbs, Oriental Chinese medicine really was a good alternative for me. And I used it in my pet practice. I've shared information with people about that. Not, in Asian medicine, I've been told that what they do is people go to the acupuncturist preventatively. They don't wait until they get sick. And it's the acupuncturist or your herbalist job to keep you healthy. And it's such a better mindset than we have in this country, the way we treat, the way our doctors are trained. And I found, as I've done a lot of side businesses that were really proactive, and herbs and nutritional support is something I believe in and have practiced for myself, that until one of them has a crisis with their own health, they really are not open until they realize that there's a lot of limitation with how they can care for their own family, have their personal health crisis. They aren't open. But I found, I found for me and those in my practice life, I got so burnt out doing acupuncture for pets. I had to sort of stop because it was just, I had people going out the door, come waiting in the door. And I'm like, this is too much. But because veterinarians, we do everything else. We're surgeons, we're medicine people, we're ophthalmologists, we're the dentists, we just do everything. But I think looking at alternative medicine for ourselves as individuals and finding a way to, you just have to be open. I found for myself, even with women's female problems and hormone issues, Asian medicine and herbs really was an alternative for me. And so there's so much out there. We just have to find it and talk to people. And if you don't find anybody that you like, or somebody treats you inappropriate in terms of, even with acupuncture, everybody's not going to do the same. Every chiropractor is not going to be the same. So you got to, take it upon yourself to look for yourself and be open. And I know, I'll just say this one other thing. I had a recent loss of a play niece of mine. Her mother was, and she was just 51 years old, but because of COVID and the hospital care she got, and the fact that she needed an advocate, she needed her mother there. She needed her mother, and her mother wasn't there. It was a terrible situation. The child ended up dying, because of the lack of care and racism in the hospital system. She didn't get the care she should have gotten because she was morbidly obese. And it was very sad. Now, she might have not made it anyway, but it was a lack of care that she got in 2022, in April this year, she transitioned. So I'm complete. I'm just ran my mouth. I'm done.
That's all right, Mama Connie. We love it. I accidentally skipped over Sister Darnisha. So if we can go to Darnisha, then Judith, and we'll try to see if Thandiwe is still available.
Mariana, I wanted to just maybe take one more question, and then I think a lot of the things that you guys are bringing up are I cover, and I wanted to get through a couple of things because I'm looking at the time. So if that's okay, like we can just take one more question, and then I'll just go through the rest of my slides and just kind of touch on a couple of other things I wanted to get to tonight, and then I'm happy to answer questions for as long as you want me to.
I'll hold my question until after you continue your presentation.
Okay, Judith and Thandiwe, could you please write your question down and we'll go ahead and move on, because it sounds like we're getting ahead of the good doctor and she got some more information for us. We turned it into a therapy session. We don't get you all the time, so go for it, doctor.
All right, I appreciate that. I'm so grateful for all your questions, and like I said, I do my best to try to answer them. But I think, so some of the things that you guys have brought up, I think I get to at least a little bit. So let me just go through them a bit, and then anyways, I lost my thought here. So a couple of things kind of getting to your question, Mariana, in a couple of you have brought that up about how, what do we do about it? And one of the things I just wanted to mention, especially, you know, with the elections just coming up, is kind of taking a step back and how organizing for our communities and our systems and our politics, local politics, national politics, is important to try to change the narrative so that experiences like we've been having are not the future. You know, that I think one of the pieces of that feeds into us as patients not being seen as human beings, not just how we present, but also the system that doesn't treat us like human beings, that treats us like another number and another, you know, commodity and a source of income, unfortunately. So I wanted to throw these things out there as things to have in our head as well. That universal healthcare, you know, taking the profit out of medicine is one of the greatest steps, because our physicians are, the good ones are overburdened, and that makes them sometimes have interactions that, if they had more time and had less pressure, would not have happened. And so a piece of how we're treated is also in the system and how it treats its physicians too. Student debt is another crucial piece. The U.S. News and World Report just came out that the average graduating physician from medical school has almost $300,000 in student loan debt as a result of their training. And so we need to change that too. Our cities need to be healthier. Our schools need to be healthier. Environmental justice is health equity. It's all of those things. It's all related. I also wanted to kind of just throw out there that health isn't just in the clinic, and that our traditions should be honored, and we can still make them healthy, and we can pull from our health generating traditions, you know, the things that promote health and good mental health, and all of those things. That mental health and physical health are inextricable. And I think also just, you know, spending time in nature and changing the narrative maybe about what Black people do, you know, like, oh, we don't go outside, we don't do those things, but that maybe some of those things might be healthy. It might help us get more vitamin D if we're spending more time outside in nature. Just things along those lines. So this is also to talk about your point about what do we do when the system is racist and when we're up against those sorts of interactions. Educating yourself on your conditions and from a valid source. So a few that I recommend to my patients, like WebMD, Medline, the CDC, are good places to start. If you want to better just kind of, not that you're going to know all of the language, but to know some of it, so you understand what your physician is trying to tell you. You have some background knowledge, and then if you feel like the person you're talking to is not listening to you, you have every right to get another opinion, and somebody of equal or superior training too, because a lot of times it's not very transparent who we're talking to, because a lot of people now, our healthcare system uses mid-levels and uses residents and uses, you know, like there's these different levels of training, but they present to us as doctor, or, you know, that they're so and so, and they might be a doctor, but their training might be different. So you have every right to ask and to get another opinion from somebody who, if they may not know better, they might at least be able to explain what you were told better. And so that's why you have, like, whether you have it recorded or you have your notes, you have another source of information to kind of sort out what you were told. And I think through all of that, just making sure that we don't ignore things that are dangerous. Things that are important to ask when you're looking at information that we get. I know that a lot of us get information like from social media or from, you know, different posts or different things we might read in a newspaper or in a magazine or things like that. But just paying attention to where that information is coming from, and also that we are not ignoring our numbers, right? So if we know our numbers and we're trying something on our own, that's great. That's a good thing. But then we're not ignoring the fact that, oh, wait, my blood pressure is still not going down. Like maybe I need to do something else, or do something in the meantime, do something at the same time. I wanted to put this out there too, because like I said, in healthcare system, with their profit motivation, they've now integrated all of these other people into the practice of healthcare, and is your primary care now practitioner instead of physician, who may have very different training from somebody who's actually a medical doctor. But now in California, they can practice independently. So you might make an appointment with somebody and then come to find out, wait a second, they're a nurse practitioner. And not to say that they don't know a lot, and not to say that what they say is not valid, but be aware that, especially if something that they're saying may not fit or may not be working, or you feel like they're not listening to you, it may be because they don't know better. Just that's part of us being advocates for ourselves, is knowing that there is a difference and knowing to look and pay attention to those things. Again, not to say that a PA or a nurse practitioner can't have a wealth of knowledge, and especially the ones who have been in practice a while, they do, absolutely. But we should know that their training was different, and we can be aware. That's it. So things that we should like, you know, in the process of asking about, you know, like you're saying, whether when you're recording or when you're taking your notes, ask these questions. I think also if we don't ask questions, we don't force the person in front of us to answer them. So they won't. It may not come to them to give you this information, but this is information that you need to know when you go back to your safe space, or when you're processing what you've heard. You don't have all the information if these questions aren't answered, and if you don't ask them at the time of, oftentimes they're not answered. They're just like I said, physicians now move, or practitioners even move way too fast because we're expected to. And that means the information that you need is not often shared. Just some examples of things that we don't want to be ignoring: blood pressure, you know, potential infection, blood sugars, things like that. Just reiterating that these are things that we have a responsibility to advocate for ourselves and make sure that we're not letting that go at the because of anything else. You know, that we're making these things a priority to make sure that they're investigated. And all of you have kind of brought up things about, you mentioned acupuncture, you mentioned, we're talking about herbs and vitamins. So all of these things are part of integrative medicine, ancestral healing, energy medicine, exercise, yoga, all of these things, prayer, all of these things are considered part of integrative medicine. They're part of all of the holistic things that are at our disposal to help our bodies to heal. It's all of these things and to say integrative, what's intended is that you're utilizing all of these things along with traditional or allopathic medicine. So it's not like You're going to drink pomegranate juice instead of taking blood pressure medicine. If you need blood pressure medicine, you're taking pomegranate juice and eating healthy and exercising and doing yoga and breathing exercises and all those things, in addition to taking blood pressure medicine if you still need it, and you're checking on it and you're making sure that we are still paying attention to what's going on, and not discounting our elevated blood pressure just because dealing with Kaiser is so miserable. I'm just using this as an example, not blaming Kaiser or saying that it's awful. So inherent in integrative medicine is the concept that our bodies are capable of healing. It's, fundamental connection to the universe that we are able to do that. And many of the modalities of integrative medicine take that into account. Western medicine kind of forgot that message, and kind of focuses on, you have a disease, you must need medicine to cure it. And that's so much of what it misses in terms of getting people healthy and keeping people healthy. Just as you were talking about acupuncture and all of those sorts of things, these are a few of the ways that I use to find practitioners or sources for integrative medicine. When you say like, hey, I'd like to talk to somebody about what an integrative approach to what I have going on might look like. These are places where you can find integrative physicians. And these are all groups that I've worked with, so that's my listing. I'm sure there's lots of others that I'm not aware of. And then just when you're using Google, Yelp, and Facebook, which are also valid because it's word of mouth and all of those things, just being discerning and asking, is this person legit? How are they licensed? And what are they trying to sell? And those sorts of things. And also knowing that somebody can call themselves doctors, just like I was saying, like with the advanced practitioners, lots of different types of training. Or a doctor of Oriental medicine, licensed acupuncturist could be on this list. They have different training. It's not necessarily inferior. It's just different. And so if we're aware of what their background is and what their training is, we can take what they tell us and what they do for us, or what we're asking them to do for us, in context. So I just to put into perspective, right? Like my training in acupuncture was about 1,000 hours. To be certified or board certified in medical acupuncture. So for a medical doctor, an MD, to do acupuncture, you need a minimum of 300 hours in California and in most states. But a licensed acupuncturist did 4 years of training and then had to take a really hard exam at the end of that 4 years in order to be licensed. So I actually have much less acupuncture training than an acupuncturist. With someone who says LAC or OMD at the end of their name. I have much less, but a lot of the underlying information is overlapping too. So I feel like I think that's also why the amount of training that I need to know where to insert a needle when I also know how to do surgeries and do much more invasive things is different. But so a medical doctor did their undergraduate degree. They might have also done masters and other degrees, and then they did 4 years of a medical degree, and then they did it at any number of years of residency after that, but they had to do a residency too. So just to kind of put into perspective the years of training that go into maybe the background of a medical doctor and their knowledge versus maybe a PA who's only needed to do 4 years and no residency, or a nurse practitioner who maybe only needed to do 2 years and no residency. So there's just differences in how we were trained. And so that's also part of us being able to be advocates and knowing that the medical system is a tool for us, not the other way around. And so that we can be aware to look for these things and just take all that information in and then take a step back and process it all. One of the things, so I do a lot of acupuncture. I think that is one of those tools in our toolboxes that we should be feel comfortable using. I know that there's a Society of Black Acupuncturists based out of Oakland as well, and quite a few acupuncturists who are African American in the Bay Area. Quite a few, meaning 3 that I can think of, which is more than I knew when I first got trained. But so not a ton, but some, but not 0. But at any rate, like it's one of those things that can be like we were saying, can be preventative and can be using to improve your health, not just starting with like, oh, I want acupuncture for this condition. It's also, I'm gonna just get acupuncture, like I'm gonna get a massage, or like I'm gonna go, do something else that we might do for our health preventatively. This is me I took a picture of myself treating my own migraine, but using it for nausea, like all sorts of things. And this is an example of herbs and acupuncture points using needles that are really painless and really effective modality. There are also little stickers and seeds that you can use on your ear. And medical acupuncture might be a term that you might come across. It refers to somebody trained like me, where it's a medical doctor who then went and got trained in acupuncture. And also there's some schools of training that are not so much based on the traditional Chinese medicine, but on like more standardized protocols, so that it kind of fits into the Western medicine model of treating disease with a, like, oh, you've got this, then treat it with that, as opposed to let's find the imbalance. Like traditional Chinese medicine will look at your tongue and like look at your pulse, and we'll take a look at your whole body and can see, oh, this seems like this might be an imbalance, and we're going to treat you that way as an individual versus treating the condition, which there are schools of thought that are more lumped into medical acupuncture that are using the same modalities, using the needles and the seeds and all the things, but treating the disease rather than the person. And then just, if you might hear the term functional medicine, it's just another way of saying we're going to look at that Western medicine stays up at the top of the tree, looking at the disease and the end product, whereas functional medicine and integrative medicine looks at all of the things that led up to that and works on the kind of things at the root of that tree first, in terms of addressing the disease by focusing on what caused it. And I'm just going to skip past this break because I'm almost done. I can get to questions. But just like we mentioned before, I wanted to throw that out there, that on all of this, giving voice and giving value to our mental health and well-being is so crucial, and there shouldn't be any stigma around it, and it's integral in us achieving and maintaining optimal health, is putting the energy into and the resources into our mental health as well. That's it. So now I'm open to questions in whatever direction you want me to take.
Ooh, well, we got some some comments here. I'm trying to see if there's any questions. It sounds like some testimonials. Sorry, Judith and Thandiwe, to have you waiting. We just wanted to make sure the good doctor could get through everything. But it looks like, Judith, you definitely have a child in your family who has been diagnosed with an ear infection, and it sounds like it's going to a very extreme reaction on how to handle that. And so hopefully the information that was given to you here can help you with that. Also, too, I noticed Thandiwe says, bringing someone with them to your appointment is a great way to get folks to slow down, right? Especially if you're already scared, or if you're in a negative disposition based off of some past experiences you've had. And I think that's a great highlight is, yeah, you can take notes, yeah, you can record it, but having someone there to be your mental and emotional support and to also pace things and be that neutral, figure to make sure that you're being treated fairly and with respect as a secondary person there. I think that's a great suggestion and point. Is there anyone else that has any questions for Dr. Razzie Jazzy?
My question is
I
about,
do. Oh,
Okay, Darnisha was on hold.
oh,
That's
that's
right.
right.
And then
That's
we'll
right.
go to Fanya and then
Okay.
Judith and Fanya after that.
my question is about diet. I was recently diagnosed with high cholesterol, about 40 points over normal. So not just absolutely crazy, but enough that they immediately recommended that the solution was that I needed to take statins for the rest of my life. And what I decided to do is I'm going to take a couple of months and really make some further changes to my already very restricted diet and try to address it that way. I just wanted your thoughts on addressing. I know that, I have a friend who died because she refused to take the medicine because she thought she could take care of herself holistically. And I certainly do not want to go to that extreme. But on the other hand, I know that there's this, they just love to put you on something that you could take forever. So am I playing with my life? How big of a bet am I making?
So if we're just talking about cholesterol, so cholesterol is one piece of a whole puzzle about risk factors and things like that for heart disease and all of that stuff. But if we're just talking about cholesterol, I think, what you said makes a lot of sense, right? There are so many factors that go into cholesterol. There's, genetics, it runs, some of it is in our genes. The risk that cholesterol plays in our body and our risk factors for cardiovascular disease and stroke is compounded whether we have diabetes, high blood pressure, how physically fit we are. All of those things play a role in how serious that cholesterol can be. So that being said, so that the decision to use a statin in combination with lifestyle and other things needs to take into account those other factors. But if we're just talking about cholesterol, I think it's, like I said, knowing your numbers, right? So absolutely, you can try things first before you go to the statin, if it seems reasonable for you, and like I said, taking everything into account, and then just know that you're not going to ignore it, right? You're going to check it and make sure that it responds to that, and then maybe reconsider the statin down the line if it's not. So the number one driver of high cholesterol is processed foods, followed by animal fats. So for people who are trying to lower their cholesterol, minimizing especially processed carbohydrates. So that combination of like carbohydrate with fat, when you think about things that are coming to you processed, that things like chips and cookies and all those yummy things, but the processed foods are the number one driver of high cholesterol and metabolic syndrome and all of these other things. And then the second thing is animal fats. So to minimize the animal fats in your diet. And then the third thing would be increasing the green leafy vegetables, because those are like scrub brushes for our body. So eating all of those green vegetables and things, increasing the number of servings of vegetables in your diet every day are going to help you to clear out some of that, because basically cholesterol is like floating fats in our bloodstream.
Right.
So it helps to clear all of that out.
My favorite fat is butter. A good replacement. I also am a hater of margarine. I've been on a campaign for years to say that it's just not even a food substance, and it's not even fit for an animal. But what other?
Olive oil, if you're going to, olive oil would be a good substitute for where you would use butter.
Okay. Definitely not the margarine, right?
No, that was a marketing scheme by processed food companies. So seed oils in general are inflammatory. So that's the canola oils, the vegetable oil, sunflower seed oil, all of those things tend to be inflammatory because they go rancid really easily, and then they end up causing inflammation. So all of that stuff that's making that went into the margarines and things like that, that's causing inflammation right along with the animal fat. We might as well have eaten the butter.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Judith was on hold for quite some time. Judith, would you like to go and then we can have Fania follow up? That hand is up there. I see that little yellow hand going once, going twice.
Yes, okay, I'm here. Hello, greetings. Yes, I'm enjoying this, Dr. Resno. Thank you for all of your information. I just wanted to follow, I have a question, but with what you were saying about olive oil to Sister Darnisha, what if you're cooking with it a lot? I mean, like stir frying a lot as opposed to just pouring it, over salads,
yeah,
but you're cooking it. Does that change it?
it does a bit. Yeah. So cooking at high heat, olive oil is not good to cook at high heat. If you're sauteing briefly, it's probably okay. Using in that case, you can use avocado oil as a safer oil to use for high heat cooking. But really ideally, using the stir fry, you can use a little bit of oil for the pan, and then adding water is a way that I talk to people about reducing the amount of oil in your food, so that that we try to reduce the amount of calories by doing that, and we're using the oil as a nutrition source rather than something that we're adding that's superfluous, that's extra. So if you're going to be using high heat on a stove, on a frying pan, avocado oil, olive oil, keep to low heat or raw, or room temperature.
Okay. Well, my main question, I have a cousin whose child is 14 months old, daughter, and she said that she's had some, a little bit of congestion in her chest, and but the doctor, they've been monitoring it, and she sometimes gets on the little breathing machine if she's under the air too long, and it doesn't seem to really necessarily bother her, and it does clear up. But her doctor, she said, when the pediatrician prescribed her some kind of steroid medication when she was under a year old.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a little nervous about that, but I understand. I talked to her and she said, but that was not the same steroids that people think about. But it just still sounded a little funny. But that same pediatrician, she said she's had a little bit of ear infection, which I have 2 children and they're grown now, but I know children do get ear infections on occasion. And it seems more like that's what's going on with her daughter. But this same pediatrician now is saying that she wants to put tubes in her ears and have a surgery. And she's 14 months old, and then they have to be put to sleep for that. So I was, telling her maybe that might be seemed to me a little extreme. She doesn't seem to be, she said, fussy at night, or fevers, or really just, having these severe pain at the head or something. So screaming. So I just was thinking that sounds a little scary to me, but
I think it's certainly reasonable to have some trepidation about those, putting a baby under surgery. There's lots of things that you can try to reduce, that you might want to try first. So dairy is a big one that can cause increase in mucus production, that things like trying to eliminate dairy first, reducing the sugar in her diet if there's any, can be things to try, making sure that you've ruled out allergies, to it or in the environment, using something like air purifier to see if, or thinking about things like the dust, or if there's a food allergy that she might have, things like that. And dairy by itself can be very mucogenic. And so those would be things to try an elimination of that and addressing the environment first to see if the frequency of the ear infections go down. You know, there are certain things that we just need to treat in, you know, like, so if the baby's having an asthma or, you know, like bronchospasm, that sort of thing, giving a short course of steroids, it's not going to affect her, you know, it's necessary, right? We need her to be able to breathe. So worrying about things for the short term is I mean, there's risks and benefits, right? But when you're talking about something like doing the ears, try everything first. And just off the top, those would be the things that I would think of. Have you tried eliminating dairy? Have you tried eliminating sugar? Are you making sure the allergens are cleared? There are kids who have narrow eustachian tubes and are prone to ear infections, and getting lots of antibiotics, you know, around has its own set of downsides. So, you know, making sure that she's got, you know, if she after antibiotics, that she's taking some probiotics to try to help to restore her gut flora, because that's going to help to support her immune system to stave off the next infection. So there's things like that, but having recurrent ear infections is also a problem and can interfere with her language development and things like that. So if you've tried all of the things that you can think of, and you've kind of, you know, one other thing is acupuncture and Chinese herbs can be helpful and they're safe in children. You can use them for children too. That was actually one thing my mom did when I was a kid. They wanted to put tubes in my ears, and she took me to a doctor of Oriental medicine and put me on blue chlorum drops and some Chinese herbs, and helped me to not need ear tubes. So there are alternative things that you can try first, but again, make sure that they're working. So try those things and make sure they're working, and then you're left with then you can become more comfortable in saying we've tried all of these things, and then that the tube might be necessary at that point.
I'm gonna tell her, how do you spell the Chinese medicine that you mentioned? Or do you know, I mean, have a general idea? I can look it up, and if you don't know the exact.
So the drops that I was given, the herb is called blue chlorum, and it's an immune booster. I'm gonna write it.
It starts with a B as in boy.
BLUPLEURQM, I think.
I'll look it up.
It's something like that. Blue chlorum
yeah.
is the name of the herb. But
Okay,
it's an immune booster, and there's some others, you know, giving her like making sure she's getting in vitamin C, a good multivitamin, things like that can help to support her immune system, are all things that you want to throw in the mix at the same time, not one at a time, but all together as you're trying to do everything you can to stave off.
That's what I mentioned to her, because she said they gave her an antibiotic to try, and the surgery is not scheduled until a couple of months from now. So I suggested to her that she might want to try adding putting her on a multivitamin or something to help, you know, enhance the antibiotic. But are there drops? Because I don't think she had any. I thought when my children had ear infections, there was some kind of ear drops or something you put in the ears, but maybe that's not, maybe that's old fashioned.
Yeah, I know a garlic, that good old garlic oil. I've
Garlic
had
mullein
personal
oil.
experience. Put that garlic drop, 1, 2, 3 drops in 15 minutes. The earache was gone for me and my daughter. So, you know, try that integrative medicine. We have 2 more hands, and we got 5.
Thank you very
more
much.
No problem. You got 2 more hands and 5 more minutes, y'all. So Fania, you get 2.5 minutes, and Doris, you get 2.5 minutes.
Oh, my question is short. One part of it was already answered. Dr. Hill, you're in family practice? Is that correct?
I train in family medicine, yes, but
Family medicine.
Again, because Western medicine spaces it out, I do integrative medicine and acupuncture now. So I'm not equipped to serve as primary care, but I can see the whole family, and basically what I do is like consult. So I kind of like what we're doing here. I help to share my knowledge of what options are for an integrative approach to whatever you might be dealing with, and then work in conjunction with your primary care doctor.
Okay, that,
There
you
you go.
answered my question. Thank you. And
Honey,
this
that's
is
what
very
we all wanted to
informative.
know. That's what we all want to know. Can you be our
Really?
doctor? That's the
Because
bottom
I was ready
line.
to call you up, really, because my doctor's going to be
Will you get
retiring
that good
soon.
consultation?
You
Doris,
got that
take it
right.
away. What's your question?
I
Okay,
heard you.
I'm done.
Well, thank you so much for being here, and I've gained a lot of knowledge. But one thing you talked about oils, and I know some of the oils I use is avocado oil. What about grapeseed oil?
So grapeseed oil is, there's a good website. It's I want to say it's called, it's not the Dirty Dozen. There's so seed oils in general. The problem with grapeseed oil is the same as with other types of seed oils, that they have a tendency to get rancid in a way that we don't necessarily taste, but that can make them inflammatory. So grapeseed oil is not considered preferred over avocado oil. Is not coming from a seed, it's coming from the fruit. Coconut oil, olive oil, peanut oil is okay if you're not allergic to or sensitive to peanuts, but to try to avoid using, and especially even more important than what you're cooking with at home, because that's staying fresh, is that you're not buying processed foods that use those sorts of oils, any seed oil.
Hey, Zarita, I'm sorry, I missed you. Go for it.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm Marina Rasnow. Thank you to Minister Imhotep, and thank you to you, Doctor, for being here. My question has to do with a pediatric great nephew. Took him to the doctor, and the doctor wanted to examine his private area, and he's 9 years old, and he says no. And he's been taught that when he was like 2 or 3 or a baby or 4, of course, but he's been taught that he should have control of his body. I would like to hear your comment. I mean, I'm so concerned about it because children, I feel, should be respected. If I'm bringing him to the doctor, nothing's wrong with that area unless I've said something. So if he's advocating and saying no, the doctor is giving me feedback that he feels he hasn't completely examined.
I think it's one of those situations where I can see both sides of the coin, so to speak. I think you are absolutely right to encourage a 9-year-old to teach a 9-year-old about bodily autonomy. And what I would do if I were in that situation is kind of weigh my concerns and explain that to the child directly, with obviously with the parents there, but at 9 with the parents there, but that there might be things that that I know to look for on a physical exam, and that, first of all, normalizing that physical exams and mean physical examining the whole body. When we're getting a physical, all of our bodies should be checked, not just the parts that are comfortable to be examined. That's part of doing a physical exam. So I would normalize that, and I would try to do it over the course of maybe a couple of visits or something like that. That hopefully that kind of trust and rapport comes, so that the child can make the decision for himself to go ahead and let the doctor, in the situation that where it's appropriate at a doctor's office doing an exam, to do the types of things that need to be done. Because it's true also as a physician that it is part of a full exam to check those sorts of things, to check for things like hernias that can be in the groin, and skin checks and things like that, that he may not know is a problem to bring to somebody's attention, or that we may not notice, and it's easy not to know, some things can get missed. And so I think that both of your points are absolutely valid, and it would be something that I would just hope would be a conversation, not just like, oh, where you're refusing and that's the end of the story, or you don't have the, like, it's also not fair for the doctor to say, you have no right to refuse. I'm going to do this anyways, or to make you feel badly for your concerns. So I hope that answered your question.
It
But
did. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Very good, very good. Well, it looks like everyone whose hand is up. Oh, Zarita, I think, oh, you just finished. Okay.
Oh.
Fanya, one more. We got a few more minutes.
Right. Where do you practice or consult?
so
Dr. Hill?
I'm in Sacramento. My office is in the
Sacramento.
Rockford area.
Okay.
I do most of my consultations virtually, but then I do see patients for acupuncture in my office. And
Yeah,
I'll
I
see
got a new
people.
acupuncturist.
Okay, thank you.
All right, everybody, it has been wonderful. Really quick before you go, take to the chat section and put one comment in that's something that either resonated with you today, something that was either new to you today. Just give some feedback. I think one thing is very important is that we give folks their flowers and not just say thank you, but be specific about what we're thankful for. With our special guest, the good Dr. Razzie Jazzy. You know, when I call for my acupuncture appointment to set it, when you hear me say Dr. Razzie Jazzy, you know who it is already. Please take to the chat box. And then after that, there will be a quick announcement and we will be gone because we know the day is dark now and it's time for you all to go. So take to the chat box. And while you do that, let's see, Darnisha, go ahead and make your announcement.
I've already dropped two random things that you all might have been wondering about into the chat. One was the flyer for the Wakanda Forever movie on Friday. My friend is doing a tour and she has some additional tickets and has gifted 10 of those to WOZE members. So if there are WOZE members who are interested in going to the either 5 p.m. on Saturday or either 4 or 5 p.m. on Friday, please email me or call me directly. I'm going to put both my email and my phone number in the chat. Feel free to share this information with anybody who is a part of WOZE. And the second thing is I also put in another copy of I know y'all, I know it's kind of complicated. I know it's kind of tedious. Thank you. I love y'all who did it. See Tony nodding because she like, yeah, that was a mess. But it's only was like, what, about 10 minutes a mess. I promise y'all not more than 15 minutes to be able to vote for me for this high road Dow so that I can get this $1,000 to buy this 3D VR camera. Y'all know you're going to want to see what I record when I'm with Professor Manu in Commit. And it is going to be very cool to see it in 3D and to do some marketing with that. So please pass on the word.
3 steps.
I need 300 votes, you guys. And you know how many I have? 25, and they want to give me this money. They are mad. The person who's given the money wants me to have it, and he's even advertising with his people. But you know, people are not doing it. So help us test this system. What we really trying to do is test this new way of funding things with this DAO, with this Hyro coin DAO. It's a new way of funding artistic and creative things. So I'm really the first person doing it, and it's just a test. So I understand it's cumbersome, it's different, but if you have voted, I appreciate you. If you could encourage 2 or 3 other people to go through that same mess that you went through, it's only 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay.
I would so greatly appreciate it. I need 300.
All right. Well, you got one more. So, all right. So checking at the chat, we're looking at the importance of having a simple notebook in hand to take notes with, Dr. Razzie. Wonderful info, getting the best healthcare. Thank you for reminding me to speak up. I appreciate you about cooking with that olive oil on high heat. And no, because y'all know we be thinking we frying something with some healthy and we forget as soon as we put that heat on it, it's dead, huh? Okay, let's see. Thanks for sharing, Fanya said. I learned new information on oils and the amount of vitamin D3 to take. I also learned some new vocabulary. Bill says, my favorite gym is ask, what happens without this intervention? Very good language. And then also he's dropped Dr. Razi's website for you to get familiar, so you can go ahead and set up your consultations as well as your acupuncture, so you can go get poked on in a loving way. Judith says, wow, doctor, this was very informative and helpful information. I like that your training is so broad, and I enjoyed your support of integrative medicine. Doris says the information about grapeseed oil was helpful. Connie says, oh, she did your voting, so you got one more. Very well. It looks like everyone has been impacted in a positive way. Thank you for your energy, your knowledge, your wisdom, your time, and hopefully you're gonna get some new brown down clients on the line ready for you. We coming. I know I'll be there, so look out for me, Razzie.
All right. More than welcome, all of you. Thank you so
All
much.
right, everybody. Next week, same black time, same black place. Peace.
One more question. Do you do
I'm sorry, Doris.
I'm
Quick
sorry.
clarification. Tony just asked me if she could get one of those tickets, and I'm so sorry. It's the Grand Lake Theater in Oakland, California.
Oh, you gotta go to Wakanda in Oakland.
Yes. So,
And I had just one question. Do you take consultations from somebody from Virginia? I know you can't acupuncture me, but what about consultations from other places?
You're welcome to email me with questions and I can answer them, just like if I can answer them briefly, but I'm only licensed in Washington State and California, so I'm not able to treat patients who are not in California, at least not at this time.
Thank you.
I mean, West Side. All right, y'all, we gotta go. We are timely, Black folks. Go and do some healthy eating and praying and breathing. Enjoy yourself. And thank you for coming to another Black Knowledge Matters. Everybody throw up your peace signs.
Wait, one more second.
Oh, Lord, y'all.
Mariana, I just wanted to say you did an excellent job. Minister Imhotep better watch out.
We can share. We can share.
I know,
think
I'm
y'all
teasing. There's no replacing him, but
That's
you
right.
did an excellent job. And I just want to tell you, we enjoyed you and thank you. Great job. Good
I appreciate your
hosting.
appreciation. I appreciate your appreciation. You know, you call me when you want to get the party started. I do birthdays, divorce parties, sweet 16s, whatever you need. I'll be the hostess with the most. But I'm getting out of here. Y'all can stay if you want to. Have a wonderful evening. Peace.
Take care. Great session. Great session.
Oh, Maya's a mess.